It's this incredibly magical instrument. Like we, Victoria, we're harpists, that's amazing.
How are you doing today, Jessica?
I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for having me, Victoria, and talking harps.
Yeah, I'm so happy that you reached out. We had a little conversation to plan our interview, and I have learned a lot about your harp journey. And I can't wait to have you share that with our audience. I think there's a lot of really good nuggets in there. Well, let's begin with telling us about your journey. How did the harp came into your life?
So when I was 3, I asked my parents for harp music for my birthday to be like the angels. I think that's what I said. And no one in my family plays the harp. So they thought, what is this child? And then later on, we had a neighbor when I was 4 who moved next door who played the harp. So we'd go to the window and look at this magical instrument. And she invited me. I think she saw this child that would try to escape out of the house to play her harps over to at the library, the local library. They had a harp day, and they had everyone presenting their music. And I went up in front of everyone and said that I could play the harp, which was not true. But I started to, play, and there was a teacher there named Miss Linda. I'll forever be grateful to her, and she contacted my parents and said, listen, I'll give harp lessons to your daughter for free. I think she really has passion. So they said, okay. So I started playing. I think I was 4 and a half, and it was my great passion, and obviously still is, of my heart.
Yeah. And you stopped playing the harp for a while. What happened there, and how did you find your way back to music?
Yeah, so I survived some pretty intense childhood trauma, and it was as if my soul song just shut down. And so I still continued taking lessons for a while, but it wasn't in the same way. And I did my studies in psychology and in other things. And after my degree, I was feeling a bit lost in my soul because I didn't have my harp. And so I went to a Buddhist monastery and spent 6 months just in silence in this little wooden hut in New Zealand. And while I was in silence and meditating, I started to hear the harp again in my head. And it was like, oh, that is what I'm here for. Oh, yes. So after my time in the Buddhist monastery, I moved to Tasmania, where I studied the harp with Christina Brer, who's an amazing harpist there. And that's when it all kind of came together again. She pretty quickly told me, hey, you could do this for your job. And I thought, what? No, that's not possible. And I very quickly started to professionally study the harp then. And the rest is history, as they say.
Yeah. And you have studied in a variety of places. So classical harp at a conservatory in Dijon, and then you study pop music in a conservatory in Lyon, I think. And
Right.
then you also study music in Mumbai, Indian music. They're
Yeah.
all very different.
Yeah, they
How
are.
did it all come together? Do you have the harp with you the whole time? And how did that influence what you do now?
So I always like to say my harp in its various ways has been my wings that have like flapped me around the world and now sailed me around the world too. It's funny, the harp looks like a sail or like a wing. So all these different areas, I came to Tasmania and studied the classical harp there, and I had brought my harps there when I started playing again. And then when I moved to France, also again for the harp, pretty quickly I realized musically I was loving classical music, but I was starting to write all of this music, and I didn't feel like I could express all of what I wanted to express only through classical music. And so I got this amazing DHC harp, and I started to plug my instrument into effects and work with the computer to traffic sounds, and it just sort of opened up this whole new world for me of possibilities. And India, I had a contract working with Bollywood for a year in Mumbai, and that was an amazing experience. But again, I was there with my harp, so why not, try to take some classical Indian music and weave it through. So I think what's amazing about the harp, wherever you go, you can sort of take what you're learning and what you're hearing and put it into your music. So I wove all the different places I've traveled and kind of wove it into my music.
That
Yeah,
is so cool. And you sing as well. When do you start incorporating singing into your music?
that's a great question. So I never sung before. And when I was in Tasmania, starting again to really play the harp again, because I stopped for a while. And when I was picking back up the music, I started to write all of this different music. And very quickly, my voice, I just started singing. And it was again this concept of finding my voice. And so I find now that it's almost impossible for me to not play my harp and also want to sing. Darling, you come from our hearts. Darling, you come from the ocean. And I say this to my students all the time. Not this harp. It does sing into us, but a classical harp, there's holes, and out of the holes, the harp sings into us. And I think it's one of the only instruments. The cello also has, the little the clay solfege, the sorry, it has the little hole where the music sings out. But the harp, the music really sings into us. And so I just feel it's natural to also sing back to the harp. It's kind of this circle of sound. So ever since my time in Australia, singing has been a huge part of my journey with the harp as well.
Wow, that's pretty awesome. And to hear that, you have find, like you said, the harp can sort of be in so many different shapes and forms and sounds, and it's so versatile that you craft a little path for yourself that is very unique between you and the harp, and how it sort of became your career. And I think that is so beautiful. So we're gonna look into the things that you have done with the harp, because you have done quite a few things. But first of all, let's talk about the sales boat situation and your many harps.
Yeah.
You lived on a sailboat, and I actually learned about this from my teammate when I told her that I'm going to prepare an interview with you, and Angela said she lives on a boat.
Yeah.
You need to talk about that with her, which I think is really crazy because you have a pedal harp
Mhm.
and all the other stuff that comes with you.
Yeah.
And how do you find being in such a confined space um, with all your instrument? And I watched one of your video. You said you don't have a lot of belongings, so I'm gonna assume harp
Just
is a big part. Like harps is all you have, right? And because of the boat too, you get to travel to many countries, and I'm gonna assume you're gonna see a lot of audience that a typical harpist wouldn't see. So what is it like to be a seafaring harpist?
Yeah, it's a very unique experience for sure. Wow, where do I even start with this? So, my husband and I was living in France, and we had met each other, and immediately we had this dream. He loves sailing, and I love him, and I love my harps. So we thought, let's just bring these two worlds together. And we bought a boat, and we left from France. I was pregnant with our first child, our only child. We crossed the ocean, and I have an album. My last album was about that experience. And so ever since, it's been 4.5 years now that I've lived on a sailboat with harps. I'm not on a sailboat right now. I'm on land, so it's less wavy, but it's magical and very complicated. So I have to do a lot of making sure that my harps are protected from salt water, which is constantly destroying everything. And I would think I'd have to change my strings a little bit more than most people. I put my harps away in their case after every time I play them and then take them out again, which is a little frustrating for me because I think harps should just be open to the world and but I have to protect them. And a lot of the space in our boat is we have a whole cabin that's just my music cabin. So it's the positive parts of it are um, at least for me when I create music, I love to have this sense of openness and space that you kind of go into the cosmos and you're there, only you and the cosmos and everything with your instrument. But on land, we have neighbors or it feels more confined. So to write music on the ocean is probably the best place I've ever written music because you play and there's this blue around you, and even if there are other boats, there's still this distance, and you feel kind of in the womb of the sea. It's very magical.
I can only stand west. I can only stand west. I can only stand to my heart. Oh, I can only stand to
And the complicated parts are every time that I have a concert, I have to find a way to bring our boat to land or put my harps in the dinghy with all of the sound equipment. And that is a journey. And it's a big adventure. And I'm always concerned that my harps will get wet or what have you. So I'm always, protecting them. Um, it's kind of like punk harp, I feel sometimes. when I do stuff, because I think
Wow.
this is crazy. Who does this? But
You
it's
do.
magic. Yes, I do. I do. Yeah.
We're going to talk more about your albums, but I want to go back to some of your earlier works because to me it's so fascinating the variety of things that you have done and sort of looking at the evolution of who you are in music. One piece that really caught my attention was in 2017, you created a piece of music called Speak with a drummer. I think her first name is Lola.
Yeah.
Tell us about that music. I watched the video and it's a very different kind of music that to what I normally listen to. So tell us about it.
Yeah, so I was really in it was like I was coming out of a flower with the electric harp. I was starting to really explore. I was studying at the Conservatory in Lyon, and I had just come back from India. I had all of this music in my veins. And I remember, I think it was after Trump had been elected and I was feeling so frustrated for women and anyone that, it doesn't fit into some box. And I went into the basement of I lived in this music roommate house. And I think it was at 3 in the morning, and I wrote this song. And a lot of it was talking about my own journey and about just the voice of those when our society doesn't have space for us. And it just this song came to me. So I was working with this drummer, and we added the drum to it, and we thought we wanted to make a safe space for women, and it was really, the song is really about women, but the female in us all, because we are, both male and masculine and feminine, or we choose a non-binary part, but this is for the women in us. So we were thinking, what could we do that would be interesting, and we had this idea of creating a space where there was paint and a canvas, and we put on the song and see what people did. So we found different women that said yes to doing an experience with us. We didn't say exactly what it would be, but we said experience. And before the women went into the room and kind of did live this experience, we had some breathing exercises. we had just some art, paint going around. We had an amazing artist who's in my most recent clip who does the art in this clip who was doing his work. We had a cello during a guided meditation. We had just a bunch of things happening. And while all this was happening upstairs, every woman by woman went downstairs and discovered this room. And we just put on the music and filmed what they did.
There's a river, and there's light. There's a honeybee, and there's a fight.
So it was a really powerful experience. And what was hilarious is we thought people would just put paint on the canvas and the whole space became the canvas. So we put white sheets on the walls and on the floor and they painted and sort of destroyed. We had to like redo the carpets. It was there was paint everywhere. But it was worth it. You do stuff for art and you're grateful you've done it. So it became this amazing space for women to create. And the idea, and we hope that people feel this when they watch it, is be free to be you and to follow your heart and to express who you are. So
And
that's
I
what.
definitely can feel that in the video. So that must be a very incredible experience. And yes, it's definitely worth the cleanup afterwards, I think.
And it was also beautiful. It was filmed by my sister-in-law and
Mm.
my husband's mother and grandmother and our niece are all in the clip. So it was, or in the music video. So there was three generations of women.
Wow.
In it. And I think they say it takes 7 generations to transform trauma. And so I thought it was beautiful to kind of have all of these, this line of magnificent women in this video.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it was cool.
Yeah. Now, another really big sort of milestone in your harp journey, you talk about this journey that you made with your husband crossing the ocean while you were pregnant,
Yes.
which then later um, born into the into Me See album, right?
Mhm.
That speak about the whole experience. Tell us about that and what was it like to carry a child in you making this journey?
Yeah, it was magical and I would not recommend it. So, um, I guess I'll start. I played in Toulouse with a Kamak festival, and it was my last date before we headed off to sea. And I remember sort of saying to people what we were doing, and people just looked at me like, "Are you insane?" And I don't think I really understood how crazy it was until now, because when I was living it, it felt like this natural flow of my life. And I think when women are pregnant, they're almost superhuman and very intuitive. And it's very important to listen to what they're feeling and what's going on inside. And it felt like this call. That's the best way I could say it. And I'm so grateful we did it because right when we arrived in Martinique, like literally 20 days later, COVID happened. So if we had not left when we left, I don't think we ever maybe would have left. And I'd still be in France living something magical, but very different than this.
Mhm.
So the process itself, I felt a bit like a washing machine because I was 7 months pregnant when we finally arrived. So when I left, I think I was 4 months pregnant and we had some problems with the boat. No, I was 5 months pregnant. And we went to the Canary Islands, which was amazing and magical. And then we went to Cap Verde because we had problems with our boat, which is just the most musical island. It's so magical. Um, that's where Caesarea Evora is from. And you could just sort of feel, I felt like she was this grandmother who was just with me all the time, on this island singing to me. So it definitely brought out more music in me. And it was also sometimes terrifying and wonderful. So our son is named him Rumi Sol, this the Spanish son, and he is so active. And I think part of his activity is during the whole pregnancy, he was just, tossed inside me. Yeah.
And the album that you talk about the experience,
Yeah.
have he listened to the music? Have you play it for him a lot? How does he
Yes.
react to it?
So he's actually in the album.
Oh.
Yeah, the very first song, there's a child who's kind of crying, not crying, just making child sounds, and that's him. Um, and in the recording process itself, he came in and he was doing this thing with his mouth that he had learned to do. So there's one song that the rhythm is actually is his voice.
Oh my goodness.
And in another song, he has a bunch of shakers and he's laughing and making sounds. My husband speaks some words in French. So it was really a family process because it was a family process to cross the ocean.
Mhm.
And every time he hears the music, he says, "Mama." He knows immediately that it's our album, which is pretty special.
It
Um,
is.
yeah.
Yeah, that's really magical.
It was. And the name Intimacy is a play
Mhm.
on intimacy, which is, I feel, what's more intimate than, having a child. There's such a transformative, challenging, magical process. So it felt like the right name for the album.
Mhm. And to talk about a magical process, when we were preparing our interview, you tell us about being on a boat in the middle of the ocean with nothing around you. What was that like, and how have that maybe inspire you or give you some musical direction that perhaps you had never experienced before?
Yeah. So after we crossed the ocean the first time, there was COVID. We lived in Martinique, and we wanted to sell our boat to buy a larger boat for more harps, and more space for our child, but mostly the harps, right? And so we crossed again in the other direction, and this was a totally different experience. This time, I had just received a new harp, the Odyssey harp, which was the same color as my first harp I ever had as a child. And I had just received this amazing instrument. And we crossed the ocean. I received the harp. 2 days later, we were crossing the ocean. So I had this magical instrument with me. And at nighttime was some of the only times I could really work on music because during the day I was with our child. And I would go out at night, and you have to watch a boat to make sure that the sails are okay and that even in the middle of the ocean, it doesn't hit another boat or something. So everyone is on watch at different hours. And I would go out and be with this ocean and the stars and the animals that were in the water. And the music just sort of came pouring into me. It was really an experience. Sometimes you try to write music and you work and you think about it, and most of this album just felt like this pouring in, kind of like moonlight, and just kind of came through me. So being in that state where there's no distractions, there's no cell phones, there's no TV, there's no cars, there's just ocean. It created more like a flute that just air could go through and make sounds. It took away a lot of the other frequencies, which I think sometimes distract us. So it was magical for sure. And the last thing I would want to say about what it's like is when you are at sea, there is only blue, around you. You don't everywhere we look, we can see, oh, there's trees or the house, but imagine just looking into something where there's only blue. And sometimes when there was no wind, we didn't do this very often, but take the sails down and go into the water. And that experience is so profound because even when you look up at the stars, you see something that's there that kind of ends the void. And when you look into the blue, there's miles of just blue, and it's a rather terrifying experience. But I think going into a void like that is really what musically I felt like I was doing, where I kind of went into those scary spaces inside myself and took my music there. And it was a pretty terrifying, but finally the most comforting experience musically that I've had with my own music going into the void.
Wow. And I think that leads us to very nicely the album that you're working on, which you're going to be releasing soon, Her
Yeah.
Odyssey. And one of the pieces that you have in there is called Whale. And you are dedicating it in honor to survivors of trauma. Tell us about Whale and how do you see music as a way to help heal and to um, help with recovering from our traumas?
Wonderful, beautiful question. So Whale, I wrote also while we were on this trip, and there was this magnificent giant whale that came up very close to our boat. And dolphins often come up to our boat, and it's a playful, also magical energy. But this whale just came and was present, and it haunted me. And it felt like even just the sound of the whale. There's something which is so moving and sad and full about their song. And that felt so appropriate to my own trauma that I had survived. So I wrote this song actually without singing. I moan like a whale. And we worked with a producer to take my voice and also then take its different steps lower and then lower. So it's this collaboration of different whale songs. And then I worked with a very dear friend who he was also a survivor of some trauma, and she did spoken word over it. So working with her was a really healing and very empowering experience as well. And the song itself, I wanted people when they listened to it to feel like they had gone, on an ayahuasca trip with themselves and met their own inner shaman. And so I hope when people hear it, they kind of feel this healing journey and the complexities of it, but that through it all, they're held and loved. So in the producing part of it, we use something called binaural beats, where the different beats come in through different ears. So if you listen on headphones, it goes doop, 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 doop. And the voice itself, what I play on the harp, it's a C and then an E flat, or a C and an A flat. So the notes are very close to each other, and that's part of this concept of binaural harmonies and melodies, that it's really close, that the brain kind of has to do a little like healing adjustment to hear it. So I hope that when people hear it, they feel that it's okay, whatever they're going through or have gone through, and that they can trust themselves and also trust the healing process. I think I once read that, let healing come to you. It's not this thing you have to do or succeed at. And musically, I think music invites us on that journey. It's sometimes we need to see ourselves in a mirror, but I think we really need to hear ourselves and be able to say, like, I see you, and I hear you, and I'm with you in that.
And I think some of the most powerful music that I personally here are the ones that are created by people who are showing a piece of their experience or themselves in
Yeah.
there. I think it creates a feeling that you don't get in just any other song. So when I listen to Whale, even though I didn't know precisely the story behind the music, what I could hear is that sort of power and energy. And also at the same time, there's a emotion behind it that makes me almost want to tear up. But that's okay. It's like there's this magical space where you can feel okay and not okay at the same time. And I think it's spaces like that that allow us to process our emotions.
Yeah. It's totally. And it's interesting. I think when we hear music that is sad or that is angry or that is happy, when we've lived some of those more complicated emotions, we live them alone. And when we hear it, it's like it brings us into the human experience. Oh, okay, I'm not alone in my sadness. Okay, I'm not alone in this anger, or someone is with me. We can get through this together. And I think it collectively heals us. I think music is one of the most powerful tools in the universe that has no language, has no limits, but it's the language of the heart.
Yeah. And your musics are so personal and it tells your audience such a big part about you. How does that make you feel? How do you deal with the vulnerability?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. And to be honest, I don't think I can do it the other way. So I obviously learn classical music. I perform at weddings and these different things, but that's not my real passion. And I often feel like with someone it's wonderful classical music, and I respect and admire so much the technicality and the work that it takes, and the emotion also, because it's very emotional as well. But for me, sometimes I feel like, why would someone want to repaint what Van Gogh has done? Like, paint your own journey. So it feels more natural for me, and I have a much easier time writing and composing my own music than I have learning other people's music. Uh, but there's this other component where you always feel um, almost too personal in your music. So it hurts in a different way if someone criticizes it. It becomes this rejection, where you're 15 years old again and in love for the first time. You're just like, you don't like this. It becomes you become almost too attached to it. So I think the best way to kind of go about it is to, like, we need to share what we create. That's just how we're wired. When we make something, if you keep it in a closet, what's the purpose? Art is made to be shared. It's made to be given. And I think that's the key. It's given. So if someone doesn't like it, or if it's not someone's taste, that is okay. But bravo, that you've shared this piece of your soul. And there's this wonderful book that I've read and reread and done at least 3 times now, called The Artist Way by Julia Cameron. And it really invites you to think of your artist as your inner child. And children are very sensitive. So protecting, your artist child. So when there is a critique of your work, or someone, doesn't like it, the child in you is just wants to throw a fit and cry, and not make ever again any art. So I think it's important for artists and musicians to do a really good job of protecting their inner child and creating space that they can create and do what they need to do and express, and almost invite the adult and then to share it, and to be able to protect the inner child, that if someone critiques their work, the adult can say, it's okay, I got you. And still go about sharing their work.
That's really good advice. And what other music and sounds can we expect in Her Odyssey?
Oh boy. Wow. So this is the first album, I would say, I think, that I've really got in touch with some anger. So even the last piece there is, I wanted to end the whole album with this a cappella singing, and that's how we started to record it. And it very quickly became like this very angry, like goddess march. It only lasts 45 seconds. But the very ending, instead of like I was imagining the sort of magical harp on the sea, it became like, oh, like it's just I love the ending. It's wonderful. So a little bit, yeah, it's a little more edgy, some of the stuff. I still do, my big passion is taking the sound of the harp and adding effects or changing some of the sounds. So there's definitely that. I use the harp as a percussion instrument because the Odyssey is a beautiful wooden harp. So I sing into the harp for parts of it. We recorded the harp. I even remember my producer like had to hold the strings so they wouldn't make sound, and we're recording with a microphone, and we're so there's that. Um, and you can expect a lot of poetry. The writing the lyrics, it's extremely personal. It's the most personal album I think I've done, which is terrifying. To be really honest with you, Victoria, I feel a little like, okay, well, here it is. But I felt the process of doing it was like I was a sponge full of water, and the process has been getting the water out. It's extremely therapeutic. Yeah.
I will fly to the ocean, sing, child, you are mine.
Oh, and there's a big connection with the moon too, and space, which I didn't do on purpose. I love in an artistic project. I'm sure we all find this, that we have this idea of what it's going to be, and the process of it makes it something so different. And I love that creative process of creating something. It becomes its own being, pretty much. So I wrote a lot of songs which talk about the moon, because there was the moon in the boat. And the moon also, for me, is almost like this feminine being, this feminine god or divine, whatever, goddess, who's always with us and showing her face when she feels like it, when it's, the right time for her waxy vixen self. And in the album itself, there's a lot of space sounds, which we started using a synth and adding the synth to the harp, and we kind of just literally took off on the moon. So there's space sounds, which I find really cool. Also because of the Odyssey harp, their logo is about, I think it's playing the harp in other worlds or
Yeah,
something.
and they have little astronaut looking people.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And it's funny to me because I never set out to do that. I just thought ocean. And there's a lot that feels like you've landed on the moon.
That's wonderful. I recently went to a concert. Darren Hayes, he was the frontman in Savage Garden, and he had a solo career for a while, and he wrote a lot of very personal music. And he told the story behind a piece of music about witnessing the abusive relationship that his mother was in. And he tells the story because he said, I think someone in the room needs to know that you can survive that. And there's a part of me that go, yes, like we need more people to talk about personal experience, because the odds are someone in this audience can relate to it, and they might find some comfort in hearing your music. So I'm very grateful for artists like yourself who are willing to put that out for us and share that piece of you with us. So thank you very much for doing that.
Thank you so much, Victoria. And I just want to say, I think there's, stigma, which I don't really even know where this comes from. Sometimes I don't think we really have space for survivors to talk about or to feel like they've not done something wrong. And it's such a big thing to heal from. And it really does take a lifetime, I think. And there's different layers of healing. So I just want people to know that whatever you've gone through, because we've all, experienced some form of trauma in our life, just to believe in yourself, and it's okay to not be okay. And it's okay that it's a journey, and you will always find other people journeying on it with you. So you're never alone, and you're held and you're loved, and you're just so brave. So just big, big, much love from my heart. And I just want people to know how truly magnificent and magical and brave they are.
Yeah. Oh, I'm gonna give you a virtual hug. I'm looking forward to hearing the full album, which is coming out soon. And we're gonna put some links in the video description so our audience can check out the album. And one other thing that I've learned about you is you're an yoga instructor. I feel like you have a lot of tools in your toolbox to help you stay grounded and connected with Mother Earth. You
Yeah.
teach yoga harp on Harp School. Tell us about that. What is that about?
Yeah, so I work with the harp school. I do private online classes, and I also have some videos on the harp school that people can just, watch whenever. But a lot of what I do with my students, we start every class with a meditation. We have a little ending ritual, and I do a lot of embodiment and presence techniques with my students, because a lot of harpists really struggle with performance anxiety or staying grounded, or there's so much judgment, I think, and it's such a technical instrument that it can become very easy to get a bit lost in all of that world of perfection. So yoga has been a great way for me to come into my body, and also come into my body as a harpist. So I do have a yoga class that people can take, and I work with my students. And some students I work a lot more with others. It depends on what the students' needs are, but I know I have some students where half of our class sometimes is doing yoga movements. Also, this part of our body as harpists, and our wrists and hands, are often, people don't have correct technique. They can really mess up their arms. I know for a long time I even struggled with tendonitis until I kind of learned some different techniques that you
Mm.
can do to help. So I'm very passionate about that.
It's also something that I think we don't necessarily pay attention to it very intentionally, right? It's so easy for us to just focus on the instrument and forgot about taking care of
Yeah.
us.
And it's amazing how tense and I know I've definitely struggled with this, but if you're really nervous about doing something, you tense up, and it's the exact opposite of what we need to be doing. To actually play the harp, which is really, I think, this extension of our own heart, and with our hands, the more relaxed and present and grounded you can be, the more connected you really are to, your instrument and what you're sharing with others. So I'm very passionate about, yeah, working with people to be more embodied in their harp playing.
Yeah. And I want to ask you this question because I have heard it from quite a lot of adult harp learners that I know. We are very self-critical of ourselves when it comes to being an well, first adult, because let's face it, which adult out here are not overly critical of themselves, but also when we're with an instrument, I think there's an added layer of complexity, and there's oftentimes a lot of sort of mental blockage. Even our own childhood traumas or whatever experience that we have in the past can come into play. I want to ask you if there's one thing you can say to the harpists out there to feel them that to make them more empowered in the instrument. What would you tell them? How would you tell them to overcome that inner fear and be more of yourself and in one with the instrument?
That's a really great question. And the best way that I can, yeah, it kind of invite people into that is, the harp. So again, it's this extension of our own heart. It's this incredibly magical instrument. Like, we, Victoria, we're harpists. That's amazing. I've often thought, what would, me that was 8 years old think about, my life, or that I'm a harpist, it's magical. So to really invite yourself to the heart of, well, why do you play the harp? What drew you to this instrument? Was it, to be perfect and to kind of beat yourself up all the time for making mistakes? No, it's because the harp is magical, and it looks like this thing from, another world that we get to play and enchant people with. So connect with your inner child. Why did you play the harp? What drew you to this? What continues to draw you to that? And to approach the harp from a state of curiosity and wonder, and not this energy of, oh my gosh, I have to be perfect. And I don't think, even though I'm very active on Instagram and those things, but I don't think it's actually very helpful for us to constantly be like, oh, look at her, look at him, look at. No, 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 no. It's snowflakes. We're snowflake harpists. And what each person is bringing to the table is magical and different. So I'm so grateful for talking harps and things in this world which open up the door to what is possible, and not saying, oh, this one type of harpist that plays the harp just like this with this technique. No, 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 snowflake harps.
I love that.
Approach it with curiosity and wonder, and also know that everyone on earth is here for such a unique purpose, and use, the harp to share your unique purpose. If everyone was doing the same thing, this would be so boring. We need the rainbow, we need all of these colors and shapes. So you're magical and wonderful how you are with what you're doing. That's what I'd say to harpists.
I'm gonna draw a snowflake on my harp journal now after I
Okay,
talk to
okay,
you
have a harp
to
journal.
remind myself. I love it. Oh, thank you so much for sharing your journey with the harp and your wisdom that you have gathered so far in your journey with us. How can we stay in touch with your work? Where can we learn about your album, your performances, and whatnot?
So you can follow me on Instagram. It's Odyssey, the name of the Kamak harp, Odyssey at ATCSEA. And there's a link on there to my link tree, which has all of my websites. So on Spotify, if you look up Jessica Browning, a lot of my music is there. I have a YouTube channel, which again, if you go to my link tree, you can find it. And yeah, also on the harp school, I give classes. So just look me up on the internet.
Will
Yeah,
do. And we're gonna pop some of that link in the video descriptions as well. Thank you so much for taking the time and talk to me. That was wonderful.
thank you so much, Victoria. And thank you for everyone who listened. It was an absolute joy. And thank you for what you do, and creating the space for all the different harpists. It's so important. So thank you so much. Love to everyone.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure. And I always walk away from every conversation being inspired in some shape or form. And I think, like I said, snowflake, it's going on my journal right now. Thank you. Take care.
So much. Bye.
Bye.